All right, welcome back to Just for Friends Trying to Figure Out HR, the podcast where HR pros, aka the survivors, swap stories, lessons, and a little bit of therapy along the way. My name is Jake from HR, and we have a full house today. So, along with our favorite co-host, we have Mama Mel, who is back. Woo woo!
Let's go, Mama Mel.
Dr. Green and the Big Llama, even though he ain't repping us on his shirt today.
Oh,
For real. That's it. I'm gonna go get. I'm gonna. When one of you talk, I'm gonna go get it. I'm gonna go get it.
Yes. So today's topic is going to be investigations, those wild, awkward, stressful, but ultimately, and in most cases, career shaping moments when someone says, "Hey, HR, we need you to investigate this." AKA the
Oh.
part of the job where we all feel like detectives, but we don't get to wear the trench coat or say go gadget and get something cool to pop out of our head.
while you're doing that, you should unfreeze. Remember those internet issues you talked about?
I know it cut off. Hold on.
$5. You owe me $5.
Actually,
Listen.
you can hear me very well. You just can't see me, and I don't know why.
It keeps going out. Yep, your picture's back in again.
Hold on.
You know, this is why we need support from the listeners like you, right? Like the old PBS, right? We need support from listeners like you, for supporting us and providing us with good internet so we can bring you quality programming that sounds great.
Okay.
But right now we're struggling.
Before you get into that, I want to make a little funny comment because I totally thought he was going to go into like the 90s, which is it's thank you for viewers like you, PBS kids. And I was about to go, oh crap, come on, get it. Nobody's going to know what we're talking about, but it'll be great.
I was going to, but I forgot what the rest of it was.
Well, in your time zone, Big Llama, you can just it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your HR rep is?
That's right. That's the saddest thing ever. I saw that on a TikTok. They said that's how neglected we were as children. There were ads on TV to remind parents, like, do you know where your kids are at 10 o'clock at night? Like, that is sad.
The drug one, that public announcement where the girl was like, she was sucked in, like all it was a skin because she was high.
What the heck were you guys watching on TV?
Well,
what time was this?
This was like, I want to say the late 90s, mid 90s, something like that, late 90s, I think. Because it was all about don't smoke and drive because you could be just like her. And she was but it was like a person on a couch, but deflated. Like, because they're saying that as you're high, you do nothing, apparently.
Yeah, you lay on your couch. Oh, listen, before we get further into not talking about our topic, I just want to, welcome back Mama Mel. She was on her rightly awarded maternity leave, and now she is back on the show. We follow our HR guidelines here. We provide ample leave. Unpaid leave,
FMLA.
FMLA, yeah, you get that. But no, welcome back, Mel. I mean, we're going to talk about things that shaped our careers and changed us. But you had a life-changing event. So just real quick, like what have you been feeling these last couple of weeks?
Guys, I don't even know how to describe like the first 3 months of your child's life. You all know because you have children. I thought I knew, and I had no idea what the fuck I was getting myself into. Before you hit record, we were talking about, Jay and I went out to dinner for our anniversary, and the entire time we were at dinner, we talked about the baby. I missed him so much. I almost made him turn around and come back and get him because I felt like he was going to have FOMO, like he was going to miss out on our anniversary, and he was going to be like, what the hell, Mom? Why'd you leave me with my grandma? I could have gone with you. So I did not have any idea what I was getting myself into. I will say that it has been the most fulfilled that I have felt in my entire life. I believe that this is what I was meant to do. sometimes I don't think that at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm up feeding him. But but it's the hardest but most fulfilling and gratifying thing that I have ever made. If I do nothing else in life, he's the most beautiful thing that I have made. And that's that. But it's wild. It's wild and it's lonely and it's opened up so many like thoughts in my head about PWFA, FMLA, ADA, the Pump Act, and like I've written down ideas in the middle of the night of like, okay, when I go back to work, I'm really gonna push on this because how dare we not pay moms when they're out on leave? How dare we be like, well, you can use benefit time if you have it, but it's going to be an unpaid leave. What the heck are you talking? This is hard. Especially, right? Like you think every like mom thinks about like the perfect birth, but sometimes it's not always like that. And you guys know, like my son came 5 weeks earlier than anticipated, right? There was a little bit of like a NICU scare and things like that. So those are things that you don't factor in or companies don't factor in. Look, I'm going to go on like this big tangent about what we need to do as companies, but we need to do better, and it's opened up my eyes to that. It's made me more aware. So I think that when I go back and I encounter moms, I'm going to have a lot more empathy for what they're going through, which I think will make me a better HR person.
No, that's the truth. It's the truth. I've said it to a couple of people. It's like in my youth, before kids, and I was a manager, I was an asshole. Like I didn't understand why people take time off to, do this event or go to a field trip or, whatever. I didn't really understand it. I was all, company first type thing. And then you have kids and it changes your complete perspective on everything. And then you realize like people are struggling, just to, try to do the work thing and be with their kids. So I asked that to you because I know how I felt, and I just wanted to know how you felt, and especially being in the role that you're in. It's crazy. It's crazy how life not only changes, but your perspective and your work is going to change, and which
Oh my
is
God.
great.
Absolutely. It's I can't put it into words. If you're a mom, you know exactly what I mean. If you're a dad, you know exactly what I mean. Although I do think dads have it a little easier. Oh, that's a topic for another conversation.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Honestly, why dads have it easier. And then I'll invite all of your spouses and we'll just talk about, we'll just talk shit about you guys.
Shit.
And then Jay can come on here and we'll get to talk about you.
I was going to say, like, I'm the mom and the dad, and then my husband's like the favorite uncle.
The hell?
Yeah. Listen, the one thing is, and I'm glad you said that, because there's always a good cop, bad cop. Like you can't both be good cops. And it sucks.
You can, but that's what's wrong with the generation now.
Yeah. But what's funny is it changes. That's the one thing I wasn't prepared for. Like I go from being bad cop to being good cop, and it's like, wait, this feels good. I get to say yes all the time.
Like a Wu-Tang Clan concert with your kids. I'm like, oh, that was like the coolest dad ever.
Oh yeah, no, I took some points for that one. I love that.
Wow. I do appreciate the buy-in, and we're going to revisit this whole conversation when he's 2.
Yeah.
When he's 6, and when he's 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to hear all this positive love at that time. Okay.
Ooh, with the positive intent.
Yes.
Gosh, that's 12 seasons of
Kate has no home here. It doesn't.
I love that shirt, by the way. I love that shirt.
Great shirt. So, we have a traitor in amongst us, but that's okay.
So let's get started here. All right. Investigations. They will make or break you in HR. They test your fairness, your patience, and let's just be honest, for anyone who's been in HR for more than 2 minutes, it makes you a better poker player. So we're going to go around the room and we're going to talk about some of our first investigations that we've ever done that made us just look into our souls and just go, wow. 1, why did I get into HR? And 2, The handbook mentions nothing about this. So, since Mama Mel is fresh back, I'm not going to start with her. I'm going to let you think about it and let those wheels turn. All right. And then Big Llama's over there stripping on the side. We can't see him. So we're going to start with Dr. Green. We're going to start with your first few investigations.
Oh, gosh. I think the first one I ever dealt with was, I'm Jake. Can you do that thing again for me? You know, at this point in my career, I had never done an investigation, and my first one was somebody utilizing a inappropriate slur towards someone else. It just happened to be that the slur came from, how do I say this? It was to a white guy. And I was like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what color you are, what your national background is. You don't use that word. And so, unfortunately, we had fortunately, we had a zero tolerance policy for that. And of course, it was an easy investigation because it was my first one and I'd never done one at the time. And so it was very difficult because I felt like a jerk, but also after I finished my investigation, my boss came, she goes, I know you feel bad about this, but there are also good things and bad things about HR. And this is one of those things that cross between both because you don't want to keep attitude and people who hate, because they should know there's no home here. Mm-hmm. And so that's the case, what she was explaining to me, because I felt bad, but at the same time, she's like, no, we can't have that, because then it creates a culture of just toxicity versus letting it happen and then let it continue, and then it will fester into something completely different.
Yes. So we don't do hateicity. There's no hateicity.
That's right.
No, we don't.
That's right, homie.
The word hateicity.
We need to
hateicity.
You coined that.
Like, toxicity, hateicity. I created it. We're putting it in the HR dictionary.
That's it.
Put it on a shirt. Merch.
So, how would you say that investigation molded who you are today?
Oh, it'd be, now that I've done countless, it shaped me to see both sides. Just one as being a human, and sometimes people make mistakes, and it shaped me into seeing both sides, not just being I'm looking for negative, because that's truly how it is in investigations. You're always looking for the bad. And so I got burnt out from it because I was always looking for the negativity, and it just didn't work with my soul. And so I came to realize very quickly that it just was not my thing. And if I had the opportunity to go back just to keep up my game, I might do one or two here and there, but I definitely would not go back because it's just too much of a negative thing for me to, I can't. It shapes me to go away. Other things.
You know what I love about your investigation is that while it seems so simple, it's very complicated. A lot of people don't realize what is considered accepted, the culture that companies create that make that okay, and that it's never been addressed. There's never been proper training, especially when you're with large corporations that have been around for generations, then yeah, it's a little bit more you come in, it's known without being said. But when you work with these like small mom and pop places or companies that have headcount under 10,000, a lot of times as they grew to get to that size, it was acceptable to make racial jokes, or I'm white, so I can make in front of white people, or I'm black, I can make in front of black people. It's okay because I'm the same race. That was generally accepted until someone stepped in and finally said enough is enough. You had to put down the hammer and have a zero tolerance because that's the way the policy was written. But that's where HR goes back and has to like open up those can of worms. Like, how did we get here? What did we do to why we did have to turn that employee? What could we have done to have prevented us from even getting in that seat?
Right. Yep.
So
I agree.
love it. A lot of learning curves there. All right, Big Llama. Now that you're done stripping for us, I mean, I was a little upset you didn't do it on camera,
No, I
but
have decency, none like our PhD
Secret
brethren.
hole right behind him. I mean, beside him.
he does have all the night lights, and he is probably the one that.
See, you got what I was thinking, man.
Yeah.
Just need strobe lights in the back. Pew, pew, pew.
So, Big Llama, when you think about your investigations, what is one of the first few investigations you've done that prompts that, like, why did I get into HR, or just wow, handbook has nothing to do with this?
Well, so I was going to talk about my first investigation, but I learned a lesson about like documentation, my first one. So I'm like, that's not a very fun story to tell. But where I guess I learned that, at least for me, there's actual imminent danger in investigations. Like, you have crazy people out there. You have some wackos that, unfortunately are unstable, or because of the work stress, they become unstable. I got called on every single gun possession investigation, and it had nothing to do with my skill, because I think at the time I was relatively a new investigator for that company, but I was just an intimidating presence. So, like, I guess I can shield, like, human shield for the bullets. I don't know. But what I realized is that people just do not, in some areas, just don't understand guns and rules about guns. And like, what I learned in that is that, one, people were packing heat coming to work. So I was like, shit. Like at first you're like, you don't think about that. You're like, everyone's, normal. You don't just bring it. But these guys were packing, shotguns and rifles and all kinds of stuff, because they were hunters and they were doing stuff on the weekends, but they worked in secure zones. So, like, they get their cars checked, and all of a sudden, here comes HR to find out. So I just was like, wow, like it shattered that sort of false sense of protection that you think you have at work. I realized, I was like, if one of these guys were to get heated in a conversation, they could walk out to their parking lot and grab the gun and take care of business, right? Or if it got that bad. So, like, I was like, wow, this is an eye opener for me. But the most interesting part was that we at the time we had a corporate security element, right? So these guys packed guns. These guys had, vests. They're former law enforcement. They would go out there with us. But I was still front and center. I don't understand. Like, they didn't know how to talk to people. And I'm like, if you were a former police officer, you know how to talk to someone. But they were not charged with protecting the public. They were charged with protecting the company assets. So they were just sitting in the back saying, if this guy gets past you, we got him. Right. So I'm like, but wait, he's got to get past me. So what does that mean? I can get some holes in me? I don't know. But no, I just think, like, that it's an important element. You have to investigate. You have to reinforce the rules. But, at the same time, you have to start understanding. That's what I learned, is you have to understand the people, right? The types of people they are. Like, not everyone is a corporate office worker. Some of them are linemen, and they work out in the field and do all the stuff. So, yeah, having guns and going hunting, and it's all normal. And then the state that you work in, Florida, which has a very, open, now they have open carry, but they have a very open policy in terms of having guns. So I don't know, that it was just a very unsettling feeling, but I felt like I was, enforcing some good rules, but I definitely was no longer naive, right? Like, I lost that whole innocence at that time.
You bring up a really good topic, though. I've noticed that in specifically smaller companies, mom and pop shops, HR is like the security. Yeah. Like, excuse me, I am 5'3". What am I? And also, I'm a female. Like, what am I going to do if somebody's in here saying, you know, trying to bite my ear off, like,
You whoop their ass. That's what you do.
No, I think this is where Paul Blart Mall Cop comes in handy. You put your hand on your hip like you have a gun and go, stop. And you lean back just a little bit.
Get on the segue.
No,
But
seriously, like, what are we supposed to do? This goes back to like our original when we talked about HR. Who's the HR for HR, or is HR becoming therapist? Are we also becoming the new security?
in some cases, it does. And I love the fact that you call that out, Mama Mel, because that was something I was going to say after Big Llama's story is when you think about HR, I want you to think about everyone that's been in HR. I want you to think about all the classes you took if you went to college. I want to think about all the experience that you've gotten your first 12 to 24 months in HR. At what point in time did you receive any formal training on how to handle narcotics, how to handle guns or weapons in an investigation or in any situations? We as HR get put in so many situations that law enforcement gets formal training on how to deal with it. But yet we in HR don't get to learn how to operate or function in those situations until we get put in them. And if we're fortunate enough, if we are by some chance fortunate enough, we get to observe it from another rep in HR that's dealt with it before and learn from them. And that is absolutely terrible because while 75% of the people in HR has the critical thinking skills and the discipline to handle those situations without ever having dealt with them before, the other 25% is the ones that there's a possible active shooter that's going to happen. There's going to be physical violence. There's going to be an escalation. There's going to be a lawsuit because that person didn't know how to handle it and they don't have the capacity to think outside the box and handle the situation without having any precedent of what to do. Mm-hmm. So for anyone that is designing HR functions out there, I want you to think about this for your HR team. Big Llama brings a great story on what traumatized him in his life, but also will help us from traumatizing other people in HR. Give us that little bit of training. And, you know, and I get that it might be geared toward like HR managers, HR business partners, not so much toward HR gens, but even then, in some companies, the HR generalist is the face. They're the main person on the scene. So they might need it depending on what their job responsibilities are. But I love your story because it's really impactful to kind of help us understand why you're the way you are today. We love you. But it also explains the gaps that still exist today, decades later, generations later. It still exists. Why has no one picked up the phone and said, let's change this for HR?
Yeah, no, it's easier because it's easier to let them continue to be whatever we need them to be, right? To get it done. It's again, this is and I say this lovingly, Dr. Green. I have no ill will to your degrees or your PhD, but there is a big separation between let's use the book learning, right, and street smarts and all that good stuff. So I think you have to have a balance. I think honestly, like it's great to have the certifications, and this is the thing I struggle with, right? I've met people in conferences, I've met people in networking activities where I'm like, how are you the director of whatever for this entire corporation? You're an idiot. Like you know the process and you know a policy and you got your SHRM certificate. Congratulations. But you don't know shit about like how to work with people. So this is what I'm saying. Like to be in HR effectively, you got to have the certificates. You got to have the training, but it's both, right? You have to have a little bit of both, because honestly, if I were to put someone who just got graduated, college, from HR and put them in that situation where they're handling gun issues, they quit that day, or they have some, I don't know, they would just completely fall apart. I was just lucky I was able to read the situation and feel a little bit better about it, but it just opened my eyes. But I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. But again, nothing against Dr. Green's PhDs.
Absolutely. We got to love it. I mean, there's pros and cons to experience, and there's pros and cons to education.
Absolutely.
I get it. All right, Mama Mal, share that trauma story with us. What made you think, why HR?
So it's not a trauma story, but it certainly helped shape the way that I train and talk about sexual harassment. And it opened, and I know I've shared this with you guys before, and I think I may have talked about it on an episode or two, but this, when I thought about like what we were going to talk about tonight, I'm like, anytime anybody ever asks me, like, what's been one of your more challenging investigations, this is the first one that pops up in my mind, because it's something that was so very it was still a little taboo 15 years ago, and I know that you guys know what I'm going to talk about, but I continue to talk about this case because there are some HR professionals that are still kind of stuck in that very blue collar ish mind, especially for people that are in blue collar jobs or places where only men work, right? Think about like a mechanic shop, think about the oil fields, like that's primarily ran by men, and these type of trainings aren't really talked about, right? You don't really talk about sexual harassment. It's still very taboo, or men are like, that doesn't happen here. Like, well, macho man, that doesn't happen here. When in reality, it probably happens a lot more than you want to admit it. But it was very early on in my HR career. I was faced with a complaint. A male employee came to my office and talked to me and said that he felt sexually harassed by another male employee. He said this male employee rubbed his back as he was like passing by him. He was putting his hands on his knee when they were facing each other, was trying to, like go out, but wasn't like being direct, like, I want to date you, like more like, hey, do you want to go grab like a drink, or do you want to go have lunch or whatever. He'd show up with little gifts for him, right? And these gifts, I think the most like egregious one was like a butt plug, right?
He jumped some levels. Jesus.
Just took his headset off for those of you that are watching.
I don't remember this.
I remember the story, but you didn't share that detail.
Yeah.
I didn't get into all the specifics, but there's a reason why it stays with me. Like, initially he started with like coffee. Like, he would bring him coffee in the morning, right? And then he, this employee was like, hey, like, he started to have, we started to connect like on a deeper level. And, we started to have more profound conversations. I thought, like, this is just like a friend that I have met here that I can build a relationship with, or a friendship with, right? The individual that complained was not interested in any type of romantic relationship with him. But the last straw was he gifted him a butt plug, and that's what prompted him to come into my office, because he said, hey, like, I just don't know how to tell him it's not going to happen without hurting his feelings. Can you do it? And I was like, what? Why do I have to break up with your boyfriend? What I do?
Yeah.
He's like, not my boyfriend.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, like.
Yeah, can you do it for me?
Shit.
Which, if you think about it, that's a lot of what happens with us. Here's a mess. Here you go. Fix it. Make it pretty. Right?
Exactly.
like that's HR. So, when you train sexual harassment, and let's bring our minds to this must have been like 2008, 2009. Anytime that you trained harassment, it was always a male superior harassing a female subordinate. Like, those were the examples. There was nothing more that changed. It was just that very rarely did they spice it up and put a female superior, harassing a male subordinate. But that was like, you are pushing it. Females don't do that. That could never happen, right? So we did the investigation, and then we found out that he not only had been doing that to this individual, but there were other men that reluctantly and very hesitantly came forward and said, this is happening to me too. And I'm talking about like 13 individuals. This is happening.
That was like a Chris Hansen Dateline NBC episode there.
Yeah, geez.
Did this person provide 13 different butt plugs? Or
was he was the only one that got a butt plug. He was the only one, but everybody else got like little personalized gifts. Like, I remember one guy was really into
Salute.
crystals and got like a crystal necklace and like little. I don't know what he was trying to hook up with all of them at the same time or individually. I don't know what he was trying to do.
No Diddy.
No Diddy
What
parties.
a say.
That was 2008. There was probably a bunch of Diddy parties there.
Not the white
That's
part.
insane.
So
I just hold on. I'm just curious how you go from coffee to butt plugs. Not like that's a giant
guess-
leap of faith right there.
Yes and no, because you're giving them a gift from one end to the other.
I gave you coffee, so now stuff it.
I just say that the levels of boldness of this individual is astounding.
Yes.
So, Mama Mel, I assume that situation, and just based on how you've talked about it in the past, it's really shaped most likely how you conduct training with your teams.
Yeah, absolutely. That opened up like a whole new level of, this can happen. This can happen here or anywhere, right? So when I train harassment now, I'm very mindful of scenarios. I love to throw scenarios in, and I love to get people, talking and interacting when we're doing trainings. And so when we give these scenarios or when we talk about these situations, I make sure that I am inclusive and that I think of, the most triggering words and throw them into these scenarios because I want to prepare people for anything and everything because that situation was so impactful and it wasn't something that we really trained or talked about or again, right? It was very taboo. Whereas to now, our generations now, or the world we live in now is so open and free and everything is forefront, right? And people, instead of introducing themselves, like, hi, my name is Mel. It's, hi, my name is Mel and I'm this. Like immediately they feel like they need to tell you what they are, what they think, like whatever, right? And so it's important for me that when I prepare my staff, especially when it comes to harassment, because again, right, everything is so sensitive in our climate now and anything and anyone can get very easily triggered by anything. For me, I make it a point to prepare anybody that I'm training as the best as I can. And I always refer back to that investigation as something that truly opened up my eyes to like a whole new world. Ooh, not to sound like Aladdin.
This is a whole new world.
That's where we'll be.
Oh gosh.
I think
A
Jasmine
wondrous
was
place.
harassing Aladdin in that movie.
In the movie.
So question. So you said you do the trainings. So I guess my question is, do you give them a butt plug goodie bag whenever they walk?
You knew he was going to go there with that.
I'm gonna say, look, he's trying to get you fired, Mama Mel.
In this economy,
I do love that story because I agree. Even in today's society, people don't realize that honestly, there's just as much, if not more, sexual harassment between males and females to males. The problem is it doesn't get reported because it's like guys don't want to seem weak. They don't, they don't want to. Yeah, it's either an ego thing, a sexual thing where like they were raised that it's okay for women to do it, it's not okay for a man to do it, and it doesn't get reported. It really doesn't. And honestly, I have a lot of experiences, I'm sure y'all do, where there's been those accusations where you've seen other people investigating it and they've already made the comments like, oh, it's most likely not true because it's a girl. They're accusing a girl. They're accusing a woman. Or no, it's another man. He's super straight. He just wishes he was sexually harassed by this guy. I've heard all of it where the investigators are automatically making their mind up before they even get all the evidence because they're basing it on their personal opinion and experience and not the facts. And it happens more than what we realize. So I think that's a great story that people can use to learn from and hopefully shape them.
So I would say this. Let's challenge the listeners, right? If you're in HR, go and check your your training materials. Go and check your videos that you guys play. Guaranteed 90 to 98% of them are the male female scenario where the male is the aggressor. I mean,
Mhm.
even the companies who produce these materials, who know that the climate has changed, are scared to change it to anything other than the standard norms that we've been growing up with. So I mean, you would think that now, right, being more progressive and things are changing and people are a little bit more open, that there would be some scenarios. But what I've noticed is they still show the male being the aggressor and the female being the victim, and they'll mention it in the blurb. Like,
Mhm.
like don't forget, it can also be a female that could be in it. And like they just put one little thing to say, look, we're seeing, we're getting it from both sides, but all the scenarios and all the samples and the whole video is the male being the aggressor. So, it's there, and you're absolutely right. There's a stigma behind it for men. Like, I can't be sexually harassed. Male to male or even female to male. It doesn't matter. Like, and again, it's not right to have the stigma, but just let's be real. It's there. People think that, and so
Yeah.
we as HR have to be able to break down the barrier. And yes, and definitely, you mentioned it, Jake. Like, if you're an investigator, don't be a fucking lazy investigator. Like, do your job. Like, honestly, it there are like 100 ways you can get out of the investigation, but the right thing to do is to do it properly. Ask the right questions, interview the right people, but just don't wrap it up for the sake of wrapping it up because you don't want to deal with it or you think you already know the answer. Because that to me is, you're hurting our industry. So, but no, this is a great topic.
You
I
know, when you
fucking love
said
this.
that, I was sitting here thinking about all the trainings because I've actually been doing a lot of filtering through trainings right now for the company I work for. And I was thinking about the trainings I filtered through on my previous companies. When you think about like threat management, active shooters, who's the aggressor? It's a
Yeah.
man. I've never seen women in any of these LMSs or trainings that perceive women to be the aggressor. And while it's not as often, it does happen, and I think that's something that I think as an HR world, I think we have to look at that across the board for all trainings, and it's definitely something we need to revisit, and I'm definitely gonna bring it to the table where I am today. But when I think about myself and I think about one of the first investigations that shaped who I am today, it was way, way back early. I think I was barely 21, 22 years old, and I was called to do an investigation on a store that was robbed. And the robbery, what happened is, I showed up at the store. It was two employees. One was injured because they got in a tussle with a robber who ended up fleeing before law enforcement arrived. And I was there. The weapon was loaded. There was one in the chamber. I watched him clear it. There was no doubt. All they had to do was pull the trigger, and they could have took someone's life. And I was the one that was responsible for putting together the report, watching CCTV, putting together recommendations, and of course, while policy was very clear that you do not interact with a robber, you give them what they want and let them go. And this employee did not. My report reflected that they were held captive for 20 minutes. If you've ever been robbed, a lot of times it's a minute, 2, 3, 4 at the most, and it feels like eternity. 20 minutes these people were held captive. They were made to walk from one end of the building to the other. They were made to kneel. They were told to face the wall. They were told to start praying by the person who was going to eventually, in my opinion, take their lives. And so one of the employees decided, you know what? Screw policy. I'm not dying today. And they tackled the robber, got the weapon away, was technically injured by some of the shelving, but they broke policy. And because of that, my assessment was they potentially prevented both of them from losing their lives. But the higher ups above me, of course, in HR, those who got promoted into HR roles but never really worked in HR fields, was like, no, policy says this. They broke policy. Term. I'm terming them. I had to put my foot down and say, if you want to fire them, do it yourself. I'm not doing it because this is my recommendation and it's a matter of public record. They ultimately got to keep their jobs, and I'm happy for that. But this is where, like, it was one of those investigations where you can't just go off the handbook. You have to look at every detail, and there's no policy, there's no process you can write that's going to fit every scenario, because you got to look at the details on what happened, what didn't happen, how long did it happen, who was involved, what action did they take, and what was possible scenarios. Did they do the best thing at that time that may have not been legal, but it was ethical, or may have been ethical, but not legal, or it's against the handbook policy, but it benefited them and the company ultimately. That was one of the first investigations that truly stood out to me, and it truly was life or death.
That's it. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because look, we operate in a, well, HR is a very black and white business, right? But we operate in the gray a lot. So the details matter. The nuances matter, the intent, and again, for a seasoned HR professional who is, by the book, they may not like me saying that, but it's the honest truth. And you're more effective if you can make good, sound decisions. Given the totality of everything you see, and versus just going to a policy and going, "Well, policy violation." That's lazy, and that's sometimes very hurtful. And again, think of the employee, think of the welfare of the other employees. So, I'm that's crazy.
I think that's
shit.
a really big challenge in just the HR world in general, where like we talk about this often, right? Did we lose Dr. Green?
We did. His fancy internet.
His PhD was discredited.
Yeah, shit.
Well, wow, he joins us. Right. We talk about putting the human in human resources all the time. And I love that you say, well, welcome back, Dr. Green.
Hey,
nice of you to join us.
I put
shitty ass internet
on my Chrome. It says to finish the update, so I did, and I forgot this is Chrome based, so it kicked me out.
Put the whipped cream down.
It is down. It's empty. See, I gotta know more.
Stop huffing it. All right.
To all the listeners, I do not huff anything.
No.
I do this.
Yourself.
Go ahead, Mama Mel.
I was saying that we talk about putting the human in human resources all the time, and I love how you said that, right? Like, HR can be very black and white, but it's not. But it's not. We look at every color in between black and white, and you also have to factor in that these are humans, right? I think, Jake, it was you that said it in the last episode, that you hate and you take it very personal when people's money is messed with. Like, you have to take that into consideration too. I think people that are not in HR don't realize that we are human and we factor all these things in, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but the worst time I think to fire someone is like right before the holidays.
Oh, yes. Oh, that pisses me off more than anything. It's
like heart-wrenching, heartbreaking. Like, in your mind that they did this to themselves, but I can't, especially now becoming a mom. Oh, why do I want to cry right now? What the heck? Especially now becoming a mom. They have kids. They have presents they need to buy for. Like, these are things that somebody like in operations doesn't think about. Like in your example, Jake, they were just like, fire them. They broke policy. Hold on. It was kind of heroic what they did. Mm-hmm. Why are we not honoring that? Why are we not, celebrating that for them? They prevented this person potentially killing X amount of people. No, we're not going to celebrate that.
Yeah. And to me, just what hit home for me in that investigation was the guy had everything he wanted. He had all the cigarettes from the case. He had all the money. He had everything he needed to walk out, and he wouldn't leave. And he was telling them to get on their hands and knees and face the wall. And then I was there when the police officer cleared the weapon and the round came out. I'm like, his intentions were not to just go in there and rob. Like, you have to take everything into account. And just before I forget, I have a t-shirt idea that's based on everything that we're talking about. We're going to do a rainbow that ends in white I'm sorry, starts in white and ends in black with the colors in the middle, and we're gonna go HR is not just black and white.
Ooh, I like that.
I
I
like
like that. Can I just share a shameful admission, Mama Mel, that you have? That's why when you said something about before the holidays, my wife will not let me live this down. So there are two moments in my HR career where I felt like a complete piece of shit. One was firing an employee on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
Oh,
I wanted if the person is listening, I want them to know I felt like a piece of shit that day. It was horrific. It was terrible. I never wanted to do it again. And then somebody else did it on Christmas Eve, but I had to just talk to the person. So the second time it happened, I didn't fire them. It was just something that happened on Christmas Eve. I happened to be working, and but the one person I did, I was given the assignment. And yeah, it was the worst day. I terminated someone on Christmas Eve. I felt completely horrible. And I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it at all. But when you said that, it's like it's the unfortunate thing is sometimes we have to do. So like forget the holidays are pretty bad, right? But then there are layoffs and there are severances and there are just all. So these are again, this is probably a topic for a whole nother day. But no, again, if you're an HR professional or if you're not and you're listening to this, it's not we're not stoned, right? We don't, like, the emotions are there. We feel every bit of it all. We just have a better way of hiding it and being able to sort of go through the process. But it hurts. And so when you said that, I immediately put my head down in shame. Sorry.
was the second thing your wife won't let you live down you eating her mozzarella sticks?
Well, that's the first thing. I'll never
'Cause
live that down ever.
always you
what was the
every time
mozzarella
you
stick thing
missed it.
again?
He ate her mozzarella stick when she was pregnant. How dare
My
he?
Oh yeah,
listen,
that's right. For shame.
my wife was pregnant. 6 mozzarella sticks came out. She went to the bathroom. I had one, and I will have not heard the end of that story for 22 years. Yes, my son is 22 years old, and every time we order mozzarella sticks, I get you remember that time you ate my mozzarella stick, you son of a bitch? So yes.
I'd be like, and remember the time you couldn't control your bladder and left the table? I mean,
Jake, she's gonna come through the screen and get you, buddy.
oh, I didn't say I'd say it to her face. I'm saying it through you.
She's gonna hear this or see this. No, anyway,
now she's gonna be like, "Why didn't you defend me? Why didn't you say something? Ooh, come on down, Mama Llama."
she's gonna be hate listening. All right.
So I know we don't have enough time to go around on another investigation for each of us, but I do think we have enough time for us to go around the room and talk about what really makes a great investigation.
Investigation or investigator? Which one do you want? Both?
I would say investigation because we can't change who people are. I'm sorry if they're too emotional or they're too heartless or they don't have enough common sense to be in their seat. We can't fix that through this podcast. And I apologize to the very small percentage of people that do fall in that category. But we can change knowledge. We can change what people have in their heads, which is what makes a great investigation. What do you need to have? What do you need to do?
Integrity.
Integrity. Doing what's right when no one's looking.
Yeah, and honesty. I mean, I know that's like the slogan that follows integrity, but I always just piece integrity and honesty like on the same level. It's okay. Some people may frown upon this, right? But for me, when I've done investigations, I will share some of the details with the people that I'm talking to if I'm looking for something specific. And I know that we've talked about this before. And I know there was a great analogy that Dr. Green talked about, but I can't remember it to save my life right now about getting information out of people. Anywho,
psychological manipulation.
No, I can't remember. I just know it was you that would talked about it. I'll remember in like 10 seconds and be like, I remember.
I got you.
But honesty, right? Like, you need to. It's important that you, as an investigator, right, that you conduct your investigations with a lot of integrity and honesty, and also practicing the pause and not going based off of the first person that reports it. And I say that because that was a very difficult lesson that I had to learn throughout the years in HR. Is one of the things that I would do is the first person that would report it, that's the story that I would stick with. Right. And sometimes that would cloud my judgment for when I would talk to the other parties. Right. I'd be like, well, that doesn't really add up to what that person said. And if that person reported it first, then, they must be right. And I didn't catch myself doing that until somebody in operations point blank called it out straight to my face. They weren't very nice about it, and fuck you to that person, because you could have said it with a little more. Yep. But what they said was, well, it doesn't really matter, right? It's who reports it first to you. And I was like, ooh.
You want to know a comment I used to give investigators whenever I was leading a team, because that's the hardest problem that I don't think people realize. That investigators, they struggle with that. They're told something and they immediately believe it, or that's the story they go with. So I used to always tell people, when you get an investigation, whoever the accused is, I want you to treat them like you're the defense attorney and it's your job to prove them innocent. Because if you are trying to prove someone innocent, you will look under every stone, every rock, every piece of paper, every email, every text to try to get your client off. But in doing so, you will discover the full truth. And if they are guilty, you will know at the end of that investigation. But if you go at them like a prosecutor, you're going to look at only the facts that are against them, and you're going to miss the things that either are very important in clearing them or important to getting the bigger picture of who else may be involved and what other accountability must be held.
Agreed.
That's a good, that's a great nugget.
So, I, Dr. Green, what are your go-tos on having a great investigation? What can we not miss?
And y'all hear me say this stuff like this all the time. The emotional aspect. Be compassionate. Be empathetic. Yes, it may be a lie, but they don't need to know that it's a lie or the truth or whatever it is. Give the same exact treatment from an emotional standpoint. If Jake from HR and Big Llama, one punched the other and, they report it and there's no marks, but he's emotionally damaged over here, then we need to treat both people with the same amount of empathy and come where they are from that perspective. Come from, what's that? Walk a mile in their shoes, that kind of concept. Mm-hmm. But you want to do it on an emotional basis and give them that true empathy that they deserve, because they are still human. And even though one of them may be lying, you can always say that you did both exactly the same.
Yep. And I think a good call out to people that are listening is understanding what empathy is. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, because that's the biggest thing that I'm sure we've all seen in investigations, is that the investigator HR rep goes, "I'm so sorry that happened to you," or "I can't believe they did that," or "Thank you so much for bringing this situation to my attention." It's like, depending on what you say is whose side you took. So being empathetic just means caring that they brought this to your attention, thanking them for the details, and ensuring them that this is going to be a very effective and detailed investigation. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Not saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you," or "I can't believe they did that." Like, empathetic doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but you have to come at it, like Dr. Green said, in a way that makes it fair on both sides. That's the biggest thing. However you respond to the accuser is the way you respond to the alleged victim, and the way you respond to the alleged victim is the way you are responding to the accused. So,
agreed.
Love it. Hi, Big Llama. What about you?
All right. Well, it's going to sound very boring and nerdy, but one of the investigations that are done really well is your write up, and it's your verbiage in the write ups and how you address the parties involved. So you got to remove labels, and you got to remove positions and titles and things. You have to just write the facts as they are presented, right? So employee A, alleges the following, right? The way you write your your first sort of opening statement to that summary will tell a lot about where your mindset was when you were doing the investigation. So if it's very like emotional in terms of we felt very strongly like, no, it's this is exactly what was being alleged. There was inappropriate touching, harassment, bullying, whatever it is, from party A and party B. And then what the results are the results. Forget who they are in the corporate ladder totem pole. If you're an effective investigator, you lay out the facts. And that's 100 times I've read, people do investigative write-ups, and you can tell the bias right off the jump. Like, they're making excuses for individual A. They're nervous about how this looks, so they'll veil it in a certain way. The facts are the facts, right? We interviewed 3 people. All 3 people, you know, agreed that this state or what's the word when you confirm something? Fuck.
Substantiate.
Yeah. So all 3 have substantiated the comment was made in the break room. So like as long as you're writing in those terms, then you can have a concrete resolution. So the allegation was A. 3 people substantiated that allegation. That means that this is credible. The complaint was substantiated, and therefore an action must be taken. When you start writing that, employee A felt completely out of line and has like, no, let's get to what this is. And that way those parts are important. They're important because they're going to shape how you write. But that to me is the most effective investigation, when I can read it and just know this is what happened. This is exactly who did what. This is who we interviewed. And here is my recommendation and results. Whether or not they do that is different. So this is the one thing that I want to stress to HR professionals. Like there is a point of frustration if you're an investigator, because the precedent could be that people who do this type of behavior get fired, right? That could be the what you've seen. And in this one scenario, because sometimes you don't have the ultimate decision making, they may choose to do something different. But what you have presented will not change. And that's what I want people, if you're doing investigations, that's how you need to treat it. Stop trying to find the out, do a proper investigation, and ask those questions, the difficult questions. And if you do that and you document it properly, no one will question your integrity, right? Which is what Mama Mel was saying. And people will understand how we arrived at the situation. So if you're terrible, or if you have a hard time writing some things, that you need to work on that. But the one thing I will say, what's effective is quotes. As ugly as those quotes are, racial slurs, inappropriate language, I don't care what it is. I will quote the shit out of somebody because it's effective. It's effective. So that's another thing too. When you write the first summary, when you write that opening line, employee A is being alleged to conducting bullying or harassing behavior, and then write exactly what is being alleged, because you're sugarcoating it. And when this goes up, oh, they just made a comment. No, they said this racial slur and it was pointed at this person. And so it's a lot different when you read that. And again, we're presenting facts, but we want them to know the exact things that happen. So that's what makes a good investigation for me, is how you do that summary and that write.
Mm-hmm. It's good information. I think all of y'all touched on areas that I'd be like, that's the one I would pick. Oh no, that's the one I would pick. But based on the areas that y'all covered, if I had to pick one for myself, I think what I would say to make a great investigation is knowing when to pause. knowing when to stop, because we get so caught up in interviewing someone that we feel like, oh, we got to keep going. Oh, they're already here. We can't stop. No, it's knowing when to stop depending on what you're being faced with. If the person you're interviewing is way too emotional, I mean, so emotional that you're not even sure what they're saying, you're having to say, well, I'm sorry, repeat that again. Know when to pause. So, you know what? Let's take a break. Let me give you 30 minutes. Let me give you an hour. Let's come back tomorrow.
Have some
Or
water.
yeah, have some water.
Have
Or
some water.
knowing knowing when to pause because you need to get legal involved because they mentioned a comment or they brought something to your attention that there's a credible threat that we need to address first that takes precedent. There's so many different scenarios and so many other situations that I can mention, but it's knowing when to pause. Just because you started an investigation, is there a chance that you could pause it and lose an opportunity? Because I've gone through WIC lender certifications, I've trained with law enforcement. They'll tell you the worst thing you can do is stop in the middle of an interview after you've kind of shown your cards, and then they're going to have time to think and get their story together. There is truth to that. I'm not gonna lie, there is truth. If you give them time to go back and collect their thoughts, they may possibly come back and lie or add things or change their story. So it may not be the right decision in every investigation, but there are the ones where it's appropriate and it's needed and it's going to give you a better and a more effective outcome. So knowing when to pause is mine. And then I was looking at the list that I had, which I think we've mentioned all of them, which is active listening, documenting everything, staying neutral, knowing when to pause, managing your emotions. And the one thing I want to cover on the documentation piece, because depending on the company, is how they document. In some companies, the person doing the investigation handles all the notes and all the statements and writes everything down. With other companies I've worked for, they want the employee to write their own statement. We don't write anything down. It's all in their words. It's all their writing. It's all their verbiage. To me, I call it the Hannah Montana. I like the best of both worlds. Have the employee write a statement, have them sign it. And the way I've always conducted my investigation is I send them an email recap of the entire statement that I took. And I have them either email me back and say, I acknowledge to everything and agree with everything that you wrote, or I don't agree with X, Y, and Z. This is what I stated, or this is what should have been said. And now I have two different statements because 90% of the time, they leave out crucial details that they told you verbally, or they leave out statements, or they leave out names, or they leave out dates and times. And depending on your mindset, even though you're reading it in front of them before you kind of dismiss them to go back to work, you've missed it too. And now it's like when you go back and talk to them, you're either possibly messing up your credibility, their competence in you as an investigator, because you're like, well, I told you that once. Why did you not ask me before I left the room? Or two, you're giving them a chance to change their story, which is going to make your investigation hard now because you got to figure out how to substantiate it. So I think those are all great facts. I think there's even more than we didn't mention because there are so many investigations that they're special. It's those special circumstances that only applies to very few investigations on you taking these steps. But I think for all the listeners and for all those who are probably involved in an investigation, know what steps are supposed to be taken. Don't be afraid. If you make an accusation, how is this being documented? Am I going to write you a statement? Are you going to send me a statement? You know, what's the timeline on average before you close this? Am I looking at 2 weeks, 2 months? Because whether you work for a federal agency or you work for a state department or a company that's, you know, localized to your state, or you work for a private industry, they have time restraints. They have to close out investigations within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They don't get 6 months. So know your rights if you're on the other end of the stick and you're not the HR rep or the investigator. So we're coming up at the top of the hour. I'm going to pause. We're going to go around the room and get everyone's thoughts on today's topic. And then we'll bring this awesome discussion, which I think was probably one of our more serious topics. I don't think we did as much jokes and playing in this one, Dr. Green. So we'll start with Mama Mel. Give us your closing thoughts.
If I could give an HR professional any piece of advice, the newer HR professionals would be that Some investigations are not, most investigations are not going to be as serious as some of the ones that we talked about today, right? And that's not a bad thing. More of the investigations that we do, it involves a lot of gossip and he said, she said, and lots of love contracts and entanglements and all that fun stuff. But take every investigation and treat it with seriousness and professionalism, right? And I know that we've said that before. You know, everybody involved in your investigations is a person with feelings. And I say this all the time to you guys, like, just don't be a shitty human being. So take that. And my second piece of advice would be, you know, even the simplest investigations have something that you can take away as a learning opportunity or as a lesson, right? To either do or not do. So with every investigation, learn as much as you can. You know, if you have the opportunity to expose yourself to other investigations, right? Like if you have the time and can partner with like an ER specialist or something, do that. Learn from them. Take as much as you can. Educate yourself so that when you are faced with these, you know how to handle them. But every single investigation is going to teach you something, you know, is either with great significance or not, but it teaches you something.
What's the kids say these days? Period.
Clock it. Is that what they say?
I think it's a period.
Yeah, period.
Awesome.
Slay.
All right, Dr. Green. Or Slay. There you go. Dr.
6,
Green, what's
7.
6, 7? Oh, no. Get away from that.
Go ahead.
All that's
Dr.
fire.
Green.
No worries. It's all fire.
Bussin'.
For real.
No cap.
We are old.
Yeah, we are. Gosh.
They're trying to thank God. They're trying to thank God. What did Mama Mel not mention?
Right. She hit on a lot of stuff.
She killed it. She definitely ended that with a period. I think the only advice I would give is, once again, be fair, but also take some things with a grain of salt. Okay? Don't misjudge before you get through the whole entire thing. Kind of like what you said, Mama Mel, which was, it's always the first person that you get that you're like, okay, they reported to me first. And it's not on purpose, but you have to remember to put your mindset to hearing both sides first. Even though somebody came to you first, you have to be able to do both sides. And so, but I do have a great joke for you.
Right.
So, knock, knock.
Who's there?
I don't answer
HR.
HR who?
HR, you ready for your confidential romance talk? Because the cameras already know.
And this is why I have no soliciting signs at my door.
Do not. I say this with the most positive intent.
Give him a nugget.
Do not quit your day job.
I know.
Yo,
Yes. Go sell some solar panels.
Oh, dang.
Orange, you're glad I didn't say that one again. All right, anyway.
That's funny.
But no, for real. Yeah, just keep evidence. Always have evidence. Don't go off of anything else but evidence when you're in an investigation. That's always been one thing that I have told my employees before, which is, do you have any evidence? And they're like, well, no. And I was like, well, then what makes you think that that's accurate? Well, because they said so. Well, then you start going into the world of he said, she said. And he said, she said, with no evidence is nothing but a load of crack.
Mm-hmm. No evidence, no case.
Yeah, no evidence, no case. And so I always try to remember that.
I love that you said that, because I have to remind leadership constantly in the past, this is not a jury trial where we get to throw the evidence and hope that we get an emotional response. This is a decision by a judge where it's based on facts only.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I don't know. You gotta love my analogies.
I love them. I do.
That's slice, man. Slice.
All right, Big Llama, give us your words of wisdom.
Well, first and foremost, again, welcome back, Mama Mel. We missed you. We're glad you're back, and I'm glad to see that there's a perspective change, because that's just life, and so very happy for you. And we want to hear more stories about the baby for sure. But like I said, I think the most challenging thing about all of this is that you're juggling in investigations. You're if you do the right thing and you have a support system, you can be open and honest, and you can be direct with your investigation. But I do also know and recognize that there are sometimes the pressures of keeping people happy. And it, like, let's just be real. Sometimes the management, or your HR management, might be very chummy with the leadership, and if that's the case, sometimes there is that pressure from um, you know from folks to just kind of say, look, we got to kind of make this one go away, or can we make this one minimal, right? Or is it that bad? And I hate that, but it's a reality of how this works. But I think if I'm giving any advice, is just not stick to your guns, but just do the investigation the way that you would. Allow those parties that have those influences to do what they want to do, but you do your job the right way. You make sure that you're looking out for the truth, right, and what is right and what's fair. So try not to be influenced by those pressures, but they are legitimately real, right? You're gonna feel it. You're gonna kind of but again, HR is not for the faint of heart, right? Like this is a tough job, and sometimes it will test you. And so, but as one boss used to tell me, this is a career defining moment, right? Like whenever we're faced with a decision where you go, it can go either way. Well, you're either going to continue to do this, or you can find another career. Is basically what he was telling me. So I just want people to know, like, that's a legit issue. But again, stick to your guns, write the summaries the right way, and you can just sleep well at night knowing that you've done the best you can. And if the powers that be decide not to listen to you, it's okay. It's okay, because when you're put in a position where you have to go to court, you can simply state the facts and not feel like you have to lie or anything. You just say, "This is what I presented," and they decided not to do anything with that. That's fine. It's not your call. So
That phantom tax hits different.
I know. Mama Mel kind of stole my words of wisdom, but I'm going to go in depth on it, and it's okay because it's good words of wisdom. I want y'all to think about the fundamentals of how surgeons learn. And for anyone that's ever looked into the medical field or looked into how doctors work, you don't just graduate from med school and they let you loose in a hospital. I'm sorry.
No,
They don't.
right.
It takes years of them being monitored, supervised, shadowed, training on hell. They go through residency, and then when they finally become a surgeon, they get to, the whole point of learning is they learn by watching the surgeons do surgery. They assist on surgeries, and then they lead surgeries while being observed. So it's kind of like tell, show, do, and review. And HR, yeah, I mean, we're not putting out, scalpels over here in HR some days, but we learn the same way. Nobody gets into HR with a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or spending a year in HR and then they're just an amazing HR rep. I don't care how good they are at psychology. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how many fundamentals or processes they know or the handbook. We learn because we watch someone else do it, and either they did it very well and we learned what to do, or they screwed it up and we learned what not to do. But take Mama Mel's words of wisdom, but don't make it optional. You need to force yourself and your company and your peers to sit in on investigations. Be that person that's taking the notes in the back, or that's just a witness to observe. sit in it as much as you can. And if you're in a seat where it's not really part of your job, you're an HR generalist, you handle more of the admin work, but you're trying to get into an HR BP role or an HR manager role that does investigations, use that as a stepping stone. Like, put that plan, that developmental plan together for your leadership on why you want to be involved in those investigations from an observer perspective only. You've got to get involved. You got to see it. You got to hear it. And when the time's right, you got to be the one that's leading it, hopefully with someone that can sit behind you and be your safety net until you become that SME, that subject matter expert. So that's my words of wisdom. That's all I have for you. Any other comments from the team?
Bring us home, sir. Bring us home.
All right. Well, as always, I want to remind everyone that I say this with much love until we call you into the office for an investigation next time.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
All right. Well, that's another episode of the Four Friends Trying to Figure Out HR. We didn't solve anything, but hey, at least we tried.
And by tried, we mean we laughed, we overshared, and we probably violated some HR guidelines ourselves.
But remember, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Don't take our advice. Seriously, don't.
And if your HR manager asks, you've never heard of us or this podcast.